Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Farm Kitchen. Today we are making homemade butter from our fresh raw cow's milk. So let me show you how we go from a gallon or a half gallon of milk to a beautiful pound of butter. So correction, it's not exactly a gallon or a half gallon of milk. I actually take all of my milk from the refrigerator, and over a couple of days, that cream rises to the top of the jar. Now you can invest in a cream separator. I actually have one. They're big, they're cumbersome. It requires being set up in another place in the house. It's not something you can have out in the barn because you have to break it down and wash it. And there are lots of cones. So the other day I actually ran out of my mason jars. So I had to use a pitcher, which the pitcher works really good for the kids for pouring out of, but I'm not a fan of the plastic. And as you can see, as I skim, this is a gravy ladle from a set that I had. You can see that color difference right there. That's where you're getting down into the milk. And I am using my mixer today. I have a KitchenAid stand mixer. And this is not a good thing to do with a hand mixer because at a high speed, the liquid just starts sloshing around. And what's happening is, as you are whipping it, you are separating the cream from the milk or the buttermilk, and we save that buttermilk. We are using the buttermilk in biscuits, in homemade bread, in pizza crust, any of those baked goods. If you saw my milking video last week on how to and tips for milking your fresh cow, this is one of the first things that we learned how to make besides homemade yogurt with our fresh milk. Now, we were already doing homemade yogurt. We made just a quick list of how we're saving going around in the grocery store, just in the dairy. And we already have hay, we already had the cow. This is just a good supplement for reducing our family's budget. So now I've got my bowl full of cream. Now you never want to do this more than half full because it really starts sloshing around on the mixer. So we're gonna go right over here and put our mixer bowl on our stand. Now I actually have a plastic cover for my mixer. I prefer to cover the whole thing with a towel. You just have to make sure that you use a very large hand towel or kitchen towel to make sure that it's not going to get caught up in any of your moving parts, because that would wreck your motor very quickly. So we're just going to grab a towel and cover this over. Notice I'm using the wire whisk. I like the wire whisk over just a paddle because it's really whipping it, and then you're not ending up with such a solid hard mass to separate out of here, and you can real easy clean this up. Some people like to switch to the paddle near the end, and that's always an option as well. Okay, we've got our towel over our mixer. You can see we're covering the bowl around the edges. You can hear an audible difference when it switches from the milk or cream to butter. Now, if your cream gets too warm, it's going to take a very long time, seemingly impossible amount of time to turn it to butter. The longer it whips, the warmer the house is, the longer it takes to turn into butter. So I've learned, skim it, don't let it set. You can skim it daily and create just an extra mason jar container in the refrigerator for your cream. I just tend to do it all at once. It's a good method for me and time saving in that I am generally starting a pot of cheese at the same time. So today we've got a pot of mozzarella started. So while this was setting, we're going ahead and starting in on this, and I can enjoy yesterday's homemade butter on a fresh buttermilk biscuit. So right now I've got this on the 3rd setting. I'm going to bump it up to the 4th setting. And generally within 15 to 20 minutes, we're going to have butter. As it turns to butter and you hear that sloshing around, I always come over and hold the towel on the edges of the bowl just to keep some slop from coming out. You can see it's just getting bubbly and foamy around the edges right now. So before the butter stage, you get whipping cream. So if you want to make homemade whipped topping or Cool Whip, you stop before the butter stage. And if you go too far, you're going to have butter. Now this is the accessory cover that I talked about, and as you can see, it opens up in the back, so there's still quite an opportunity for splash there, and it starts splashing so much that I don't think this extra couple of inches really is that beneficial. So this is just one of those accessories that came with the mixer that gets stuffed in the back of the Lazy Susan and never used. Now a farmhouse kitchen can be really busy, even if you're not doing this on a farm. You can see that while the cheese was starting, I started the butter. This morning's breakfast dishes needed to be washed up so that I could continue on. We're going to be making some homemade bread items today, and I need this area of the counter clean so that I can run my food processor. We're going to be making some bagels a little bit later, and for bagels, we're going to be needing some homemade cream cheese. So just don't be overwhelmed by the amount of dishes. I do everything by hand here. We quit using the dishwasher months and months ago. It's just too many hours of running the dishwasher when I can just be at the kitchen when I'm already waiting on something else anyway. So let's see how our progress is going. Right now we have whipped cream. See that? It's just really airy. So if we were to add powdered sugar to that, you'd have some beautiful whipped cream. Now it goes from this stage to butter pretty quickly. It tastes wonderful, so light. So back on a medium high speed for that, and we're checking in on the mozzarella to see if we have a clean break or if it needs to set a little longer. So I can feel curds starting, but we're gonna go ahead and let that set. So as I said before, I'm doing other things in the kitchen as I'm working on my butter or I'm working on my cheese. And I just happen to be right here working on making my bread products for the day. So like my buttermilk from my yesterday's butter is getting used in that, and I heard a difference in the sound of the mixer. So let's turn this around and show you what is going on. So this is what it looks like, and all of a sudden you just hear that sloshing. So you definitely can tell a difference, and at a high speed, you got to keep your ears open for that. I've been up and down to the basement for laundry and other things, and I just kind of stay close and within earshot and just keep an eye on it. So see how my butter is all getting bound up in the whisk? That's real good for me actually, because it makes it easier to drain off. So that was just to show you, on a low speed with it uncovered. Some of the butter is still down in the bowl, so we're just going to grab a strainer. So I've got a strainer in my bowl, and this is just to get the buttermilk out. And I'll put this extra butter in the bottom of the colander or strainer right back into my mixer bowl. We don't want to waste any of it. And now all of my butter is right here. All of my butter is right here on my whisk, so I will just use my hands and get that right off of there. Now one of the next important steps of this is rinsing out any excess buttermilk. That will spoil your butter quickly. Now I know some people are against salting your butter. I like a little salt in it just for preservation. We like to keep the fresh butter right in the pantry for snacking with the homemade biscuits. And without the butter, it'll spoil quickly. A butter belt does help. My particular butter dish sits in cold water. Okay, so now we're just going to take this and we're going to rinse it off. We form it into a ball and run cold water over it. It keeps your hands cold, it keeps the butter cold, so that you're not losing any of your volume. Now our well water is about 50 degrees, so that's nice and cold. And you just keep rinsing out your bowl until it's clear. So in the bowl at the same time, I'm squeezing water out of it, just like kneading homemade bread. And when that water is clear, coming off of the butter, then you know you've rinsed your buttermilk out of it. And I just use my hands to make sure that I get any excess butter off of the sides of the bowl. Now I know some people suggest like passing this around in a jar to the family and letting them shake it. My butter was a little slow today, and I would say that probably took about 35 minutes in the mixer. So yeah, you have to have some patience with it. You don't always know how long it's going to take. So now it's nice and clear, and we're just going to grab a little bit of salt, whatever salt you like. If you want to flavor your butter at this point, that's a good time to do it. And we have sea salt here today. So I just sprinkle a little salt on it, and then I mush it with my hands to mix it in. Just knead it in. And some people say a pinch of salt. It's never more than a half a teaspoon for this much. If you went all gung-ho, a full teaspoon at a time, you're gonna oversalt your butter. And that is it. So now we're just pressing that water out of it. Some people like to use a spatula for this part. I really just like to do things with my bare hands because that is the best tell for somebody who's done this for a while. So if you're anything like me, your neighbors or your relatives have given you containers, plastic containers. These are the old freezer containers for putting up food rather than canning them. They work perfectly for putting your butter in the containers, and then if you want to freeze it for later, you can do that also. Some people prefer to put it in a butter mold. To me, that's just one extra step that I don't really find terribly necessary. I actually spent the day organizing my canning pantry in the basement, and that includes empty jars and containers. So I found a lot of these, and we're going to be washing and cleaning them up because they haven't been used in years. So we'll give them a nice hot washing and let them set out. And here I have another batch of butter for another day. Now my buttermilk for today, I have probably got 1.5 quarts of buttermilk. I'll put this into a jar and label it. I'm going to use yesterday's buttermilk in today's baked goods and save this for tomorrow's pancakes and waffles. I hope this helps you all in your homesteading journey. It's really fun to learn these new things, even to only try it once. Months ago, we could hardly find any butter at all, and we were spending $5 and $6 for 1 pound of butter, with 4 quarters. We actually had resorted to going and buying butter at Menards because they were the only place that had egg, cheese, and butter at the normal price when everyone else's eggs had gone up to $5. They were still charging $3 for a dozen eggs and $3 for the butter. So it was good to source different, unusual things to keep our pantry full. And in the meantime, our pantry is going to be getting pretty full with some butter and some other dairy products. The kids keep saying, there's nothing to eat, there's nothing to eat. There's so much stuff to eat, you just have to cook it. We're home anyway, we're going to spend the time and save the money. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.